Welcome to the Rockland Board of Sewer Commissioners meeting, Tuesday, February 23rd. Please be advised that this open meeting is being broadcast live and recorded by WRPS for playback on demand within 24 hours of this event at wrpsrockland.com. Thank you. Hi, Keith. I believe you know everyone, but I'll introduce them again. Chuck Hessian, Commissioner. Stacy Callahan, Human Resources. Dave Taylor, Interim Superintendent. Behind me is Robin Day, Secretary, and myself, Walter Simmons, Commissioner.
You can conduct us
Ron Kubicki will not be in attendance again this evening. So I will turn this over to Stacy to start the interview.
I'm sorry, it's really loud.
Yeah, it's very loud.
So I wasn't sure.
Pardon?
Can you turn it over to me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Keith. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming back again. Hopefully this will be the final interview, and then we can make the decision and have some answers shortly. But before we start, would you mind just like I know that we already went through this the last interview, but just give a brief synopsis of your municipal experience and what brought you here to the
Sure.
sewer superintendent position.
Absolutely. My name's Keith Nastasia. I've been around infrastructure, every aspect of infrastructure for close to 30 years now, 28 years. The last 10 years, the government side of things, but working private. I'm very comfortable around everything, water, sewer, drainage, everything. I know this job is a sewer job. I just want to let you know that I'm very comfortable around sewer. Good at problem solving, working with others, bring people along, help manage. I've been a part of huge capital improvement projects throughout a lot of my lifetime. Taking things that nothing and or rebuilt and rehabbing, replacing, and or building from the ground up. So I have a large extensive background in facilities and infrastructure. So I said very comfortable with positions the position that's available and also the daunting tasks that come with it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we're just going to ask a few questions. I'm going to kind of start off with, I know that you had a tour last week, I think it was last week, of the sewer plant.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how the tour went? Did you learn anything that, or did something stick out to you that you thought was important to maybe speak about, or that you learned about, or that you have questions about?
The one thing I will say is the Rick and Ed, absolute professional.
Good.
They were just very accommodating, very very easy to talk with, and for the age of that plant, I was very impressed because where I am right now, it's a water treatment plant, night and day compared, and water's supposed to be very clean, and this plant I was overwhelmed at how clean and organized that plant was. And I know that the town has a lot of difficulties because of the age, breakdowns and things are beyond their useful life. I understand that, and that's where I'm very comfortable in taking on that type of task. Because where I currently am, I took over a plant that the earliest pump was 1975. So old age 1888 building, I totally understand it. Yeah, but I was very, very impressed with, like I said, the professionalism of Rick and Ed there, and even the SCADA controls was outstanding, because a lot of people don't put their, or I should say, towns don't put the attention into SCADA, and that's a lifeline to a system like this. There's not a lot of places out there that in tune with it, and so that was very, very impressive to see the SCADA and actually walk through it, and it was it's comfortable to see that the town is being they're investing in to protect the infrastructure, and also cuts down on man hours, that you don't have people out there 24/7 manning things, that there's alarms and whatnot, and it's a huge benefit.
Did you have any follow-ups on that? Okay. Switching gears a little bit, what will your plan or approach be in the first 30 days of your employment as superintendent?
To get to know all the individuals at the treatment plant is numero uno, probably one, but also to work with the commissioners and with the town administration of what is the biggest priorities. I understand the plant needs some significant upgrades, but everyone can talk about we need upgrades, but is the financial backing there? Is the town going to be moving forward with it? And also to seek out what are the best options that are there, that you want to make sure you get good bang for the buck, especially if you're looking to invest up to $40 million. You want to make sure everything's being done right.
I sent some slides over from the superintendent. Was there anything that's, not the superintendent, I'm sorry, the commissioners.
Yeah.
Was there anything in those slides that sort of stuck out to you, or it was regarding the study? Was there anything that, you feel like you have any questions for?
Yeah, the questions I have for it was, how long has the study been going on for, with the plant, that we know it needs upgrades? Is it something that's been going on for 20, 30 years? And I totally understand. Funding is the biggest.
The study was contracted back in June of last year. They reviewed data from as far back as 2007. That's when they really started accurately reporting data. The flows are a little off, because there was some bypass going on during high flow events, but everything as far as report studies, they've had all of that. They were very in-depth looking at the equipment. They spent a lot of time doing that. They had structural engineers in. They were pretty meticulous. I was very impressed.
I was just curious, was there an RFQ out there to get competitive pricing or whatnot?
We went out with an RFQ back in August of last year before last. August the 19th, we went out with an RFQ.
Oh, okay.
We went out to 7 parties. 5 attended the opening bid meeting, and only 3 bid.
Okay.
And one was way off, 2 were just right there.
Okay, so at least it was put out there, and you got the best price.
Right. The company we selected met every detail and expectation of the RFQ.
Okay. Oh, excellent. All right. And I know no one likes to hear the 4 magic letters, or big letters. Was MWRA ever considered for instead of a wastewater treatment plant to connect to MWRA? I said a lot of communities don't like it because prices always go
No,
up.
I've dealt with the MWR as well. So
Excuse me?
I've dealt with them as well for many years. They're not pleasant to deal with. But I was very impressed as an engineer. I was very impressed with how thorough they were, the mechanical questions that they asked. And I had never worked with this firm before. This came from a recommendation from my town administrator, as a matter of fact. He had worked with them in the past, and no influence, but they were just they rose above everyone that we dealt with.
Okay.
I'm very impressed with them.
All right, and then the other question I had with your I&I fees. When there's new development going on, everyone pays into the I&I fees. Is there a separate account that those fees go to so then when you want to start doing some I&I work?
Well, we want to start doing I&I immediately. That should have been ongoing. We're under an administrative order, and that was part of our corrective actions. I was going to get into that a little later.
Sure,
about
okay.
that.
Yep, no problem.
You can actually segue into it, and then I can wrap around
All
at
right.
the end with the other two questions.
Okay, I'm going to kind of structure this, so bear with me, all right? The superintendent reports to the Board of Commissioners. They're elected with the responsibility to assure regulatory compliance of the facility and that money is being spent appropriately and correctly. The commission's also going to be responsible for establishing the contract terms and conditions for the superintendent. Now, there'll be short and long-term goals established that were mutually agreed on and set for you to meet should you be selected. Now, barring any unforeseen circumstances, you'll be held accountable to those goals and objectives. Do you have a problem with that, or?
No, it's, it comes with the territory.
Okay. What would you like to see from the Board of Commissioners?
Support. It's the biggest thing is support. It said, dealt with communities that, they like to moan and groan about a lot of things, but they don't fund it to resolve the problems. As long as the support is there,
Okay, we hold meetings once a month, public meetings. I'm sure you're familiar with those. In that, there's just one thing I'd like to see is to have more public involvement, especially when we're going to be going to such a large capital expenditure on the people. And I'd like to see them, as we progress along the way, not to depend on meetings minutes rather, if they have questions. I was thinking of opening up the last 15 minutes of a meeting to the public to input on that, or select. Would you have a problem with that?
no, I love dealing with the public.
Now, naturally, there's going to be circumstances where there's some confidentiality that you'll establish, or we'll establish, or the town hall will establish. How do you look as the public as far as the operation of your department? Do you look at totally open with the residents, or do you keep them as a need-to-know basis, or do you feel they can be manipulated to come around to your way of thinking? How would you approach the public?
I interact with the public every place I've been. I try to get their involvement, make them aware of what's going on. Last thing someone wants to be doing is be blindsided that, okay, we have this, X amount of dollars, just say, $1 million upgrade. What's it for? People just see it's $1 million. We don't know what's going on. Letting people know and educating them of what's going on goes a long way. So at least they know where the dollars are going.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, let me interrupt briefly. The microphones only pick up your voice for what we put on TV. There is no local reinforcement in here. So please be sure you speak up so that everybody at home can hear you, but so that other people in the room.
Okay, one thing I want to get across is that it's imperative you understand that Rockland is a blue-collar town. And its residents, like every other town, have been hit hard with COVID. And therefore, the budget restrictions, it's going to be reflected in your budget, annual budget. Now, one thing about this department, we're not going to be able to add levels of bureaucracy. So the creation of an additional position to help out may not be there. But you're going to be a one-man show for the foreseeable future. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I've been.
Now, the one-man show also, involves Suez as well, our contract operators.
Yeah, no, totally understandable. I've been a one-man show previously before. I was in the naval base for 3, and I did the whole thing by myself. So
We'll talk to you about that. Okay, now your SSES. Okay, to date, Rockland has spent $600,000 on 2 SSES studies and another $340,000 to document, identify, and remove 350,000 gallons or sources of I&I for a total expenditure of $940,000. To date, and not counted in our current loading, We have already approved 16,825 gallons a day. We have pending that are being talked about for this year, year and a half, another 41,000 gallons a day. And that we know of, and 200,800 gallons a day predicted in the very near future, long-term down the road. Now, even if the connection is municipal here in town, and they don't pay the fees, we still have to account for that I&I as part of our corrective actions to the EPA. And that corrective action requires that the applicant remove 11 gallons for every one they contribute to the waste stream.
Mhm.
That means, based on our 11-1 EPA mandate, for what we've approved so far in 11-1, we have to remove 185,000 gallons of I&I this year already, 448,000 gallons pending, and another, if the 200,800, that's 2.2 million. So that all adds up to about 2.8 million gallons a day to satisfy our I&I. Now, we have an option that allows the applicants for new connections to waive our moratorium. We have a moratorium for new connections. And that allows them to pay a one-time fee of $20 a gallon times 110 Title V a gallon times the 11-to-1 ratio and the number of bedrooms. Again, that's to remove 11 for every one that discharges, to remove sources of I&I. Now, knowing this, that a lot of those funds, or some of those funds, have also been used in emergency repairs. Here's my questions for you. For you, would you leave the fee structure as is? Would you have the applicant on his own pay to locate and remove those sources of I&I on their own instead of the fees being charged before they connect? Have the applicant wait until we find the find and repair the sources and charge him the applicable amount? And last of all, if we've already, say we've approved A, B, C, would you say, okay, you've got first priority to find your I&I, and then the next, and so on and so on? How would you handle that?
Yeah, like where I currently am, I use all the options. Like, we have a developer that, they're just carpenters, so they're not going to be able to do any infrastructure work. So they're going to pay the fees. But if you have a developer that knows infrastructure, like where I currently am, there's one, he's a builder, but he also does all infrastructure. And he has the options of, okay, just say, for instance, we'll just use whole numbers. He's doing he owes $150,000 worth of I&I fees. I give him the option. You can either cut a check to the town, or I'll give you a project, and I price out the project that's going to be relative to $150,000 worth of work.
So you specify the project that fund will go to.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so you have the funding. Let's use, for an example, $100,000.
Mhm.
Would you then go out and pay to find $100,000 of I&I? Would take that fee, find it, and identify the sources to alleviate that 11-1?
Oh, I would take on the work, like find a job, because the last thing I want to do is start spending money with an engineering firm that, okay, now that's $100,000, you could be down to $80,000. So it's, institutional knowledge is great, and that's currently where I am right now. I use people that know the infrastructure, that have been around, and know that, okay, just say, oh, Union Street in the downtown area, granted, they just paved that road, so you don't want to touch that, but, try to find areas where there's known I&I areas that brings in a lot of the groundwater. That's where you want to attack first, and just as long as it's not on the roads program.
Okay. I'm going to give you this to read. I'm reading it in. I'm going to give you a little scenario. How to handle this. Now, as you know from the slides, we're facing a major facility upgrade.
Mhm.
We've been told that 95% of our equipment is beyond life expectancy, and parts are required to repair, and some are obsolete, and those parts are not available. Now, we were also told it's a matter of when we have a major failure, not if we have one, and that we need a contingency plan, mostly focused on our aerators to deal with possible failures. Would you be able to to prepare that contingency plan, or would you expect Suez to do that for you?
I'd have to probably consult with them, because it's something that, you know, not 100% confident with. So I definitely I'd want to talk with them, get their input, and of, you know, what exactly needs to be done. You know, it's better to have a few heads thinking about it rather than just one.
You get good people there, I'll tell you that. Okay, now, again, I went into it earlier, but we're projecting $1 million budget deficit, and the funds, the sewer department is totally funded on the fees it collects, new connections and its users' fees, not tax dollars. And so we're looking at the possibility of rate increases, somehow banking funds for improvements, more importantly, finding state and federal grants. Now, the new connections are going to impact our current capacity situation, you know, along with the administrative order, and it's probably likely that we're going to be facing a consent order. So now you're constantly being pressured by town hall and to accommodate developers. Now, I told you the amount of gallons that we're expecting, and we have that 11-to-1 ratio. How would you approach it? What do you consider the most immediate issue to address first?
Well, if you can't accommodate new connections, you got to start removing some of the I&I to accommodate the flows coming into the plant. So I would start with going after the high areas with I&I, so that the treatment plant can accommodate the additional flow, because the plant is you know, that's going to be a major upgrade, and that's going to take some time. But if you're looking for immediate growth, then you're going to start attacking some of the I&I areas to help reduce some of the flow to allow new flows coming in. Because the other thing with new development too, a lot of low flow faucets and, you know, toilets and all that stuff. So the 110 gallons per bedroom per day, it's a high number nowadays. Because with all the new you know, I said low flow faucets and everything, the flows aren't really as high anymore, as high as, you know, with the Title V exploitation. So, you know, attacking high I&I areas is going to help offset new development.
Okay, but it's a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm. I totally understand.
Your money comes from the developers.
Uh-huh.
When do you say enough is enough?
That's a double-edged sword too, because, you know, the town, it's not just also, you know, sewer connection fees, you know, sewer revenues. It's also tax base for the town. So it's you got me on that one. That's tough. I mean, I'd probably say when the bow breaks is when DEP or EPA comes in and says you're not doing any more. Then, you know, you're going to kind of you're in a tough situation there.
So you'd go after the I&I first, and meanwhile your equipment is continued to wear and tear.
Oh yeah, no, totally understand. I say it's you know, this job is going to be a juggling act. I mean,
Okay.
you know, you're going to have to be thinking on your feet at all times. I mean, it'd be great if you could start doing some upgrades at the plant simultaneously while you're attacking I&I. You know, I love multitasking. I can't have enough projects going at the same time, and just keeps everyone sharp. So, you know, if the funding is there that allows to do multiple things at once, I'm all for that. That's, like I said, I can't sit still. I always have to be moving. I have currently right now over a dozen capital improvement projects going on at the same time, and I'm not at all stressed. I love juggling, and I'm just boom here, give me updates here, what's going on here. I could take that on. That it does not bother me one iota.
What would you advise, if you had to give some advice to other boards in town, say planning and zoning, or the commissioners, how do you see their role in your dilemma, and how would you get them to work with you?
Well, the planning board is huge, you know, to make you aware of any new development coming on. Like, you know, if there's another Millbrook in the, you know, coming up, if there's another French's Crossing, you know, if there's any of that, because then you know what to expect. Oh, there's another 100 houses coming in. So we know, like, okay, we need to build capacity, and also we need the confidence in that plant that we're going to be able to take on this additional flow. So everything goes, you know, everything plays into each other. So planning's got to let you know, and then also, then with that, You gotta let the commissioners know, you gotta let the town administration know that, okay, the plant is at its breaking point. We understand development, increase in taxes, but if you're gonna increase flow and this plant can't, take the capacity, you could be looking at, a major, if there is a major catastrophe, then there's gonna be no more development, and also, the fines that come with sewer sanitary overflows and negligence, could bankrupt a town.
Do you have the guts to say no? Enough?
I have no problem saying no, but
Okay.
you got to make sure that the powers that sign the paycheck are in agreement.
No, it's a tough thing to juggle. It really is. And I don't envy you at all in that. So what would be, if you had to recommend to town hall, or to the town in general, with regards to the constant demand for new connections, what would you say the number one focus should be for new connections?
If one that, if the capacity is there, okay, we can keep going, but you got to start making, take an eye and eye out so that we can take on the new connections. It's a juggling act. You got to remove some to be able to accept some, and also it's a multitasking thing. Get credits in your system to be able to take on the new stuff, but you also got to make sure that that plant is going to be able to handle it.
Okay. Now again, I hate to keep going back to money, but it makes the world go round. Due to funding constraints, hiring an outside firm to oversee any of the planning or requests for quotes and all that, are you comfortable on individually handling those, to write those, prepare them, and submit them?
Yeah, I've written my own bids, RFQs in the past, and I keep a template. So I'm not afraid to do it.
Okay, I'm going to give you the best for last. To me, honesty is really important. It's the key. And it's very important with this question. Are you prepared to commit to Rockland for the long-term foreseeable future and not just use us as a career stepping stone?
That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who wants to commit themselves to me as much as I want to commit to the town. And I haven't had that in the last 5 years. So I want somebody, a town, community that wants to invest in me or commit to me as much as I want to commit to them. Not just use me for my connections that I have in the State House, my ability to write grants, to bring money, and be productive.
Because you're coming in at a very key time for Rockland.
Like I said, I'm not saying I'm God's gift to, public works and infrastructure, but I know what I'm doing, and I'm every place I've been successful in turning things around. Up, getting where I am right now. They had a treatment plant that was similar to what you're encountering right now, and that plant right now, I could turn my back on and not have to worry for 20 years if I could get rid of the operators that are there. They're not good individuals, but the upgrades that I've overseen to get done in that plant, 20 years easily. They would have no worries whatsoever.
So, again, I'm getting off the script a little bit. You're comfortable with, let's say, State House connections to help you through at least getting grants written and into the right hands for consideration?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'd have to get to know some of the politicians in this area, and I said I'm not shy. I didn't know them where I currently am, and I got to know them. They call me frequently, and it upsets the town manager, but hey, it is what it is. Where I was way out west, I didn't know a soul out there, and they would call me 11, 12 o'clock at night, because I'd apply for a grant, and they're like, oh, hey, we see that you applied for this, and I'm like, yeah, can you write a letter of support to push this thing along? Like I said, I got an emergency $500,000 bridge grant because they're going to close a road, a major avenue, town that I used to work in. And there was one phone call and an email, and I got support from a senator, and we got the grant the next day. I'm not saying I can get every grant I want, but I established contacts, and I'm not pushy, but I'm persistent.
But you have the experience in inroads to at least help direct grants go to the right hands.
Yes, absolutely. And then, and the other thing with that too, there are some firms out there too that they have, one of their employees is in the State House, and that's some of the contacts that I got that, hey, all right, this work, if you can get me the grants, we'll give you the work. That's sometimes how it plays out. So it's, you gotta, I guess, play the game.
Thank you.
Over the last 2 weeks, you've been here a couple of times, you've been to the tour, you've learned more about, we've sent you some slides. Through this process, were there any questions when you left the last time that you thought, oh, I wish I asked and didn't ask? Is there anything that you want
No, 'cause
or need more
we-
information on?
We covered that just with this conversation. So I had my questions written down on those papers. I'm like, it's not proper to bring them in with me. So I was just remember, but you brought them up, so I got the clarification that I was looking for, or the answers I was looking for.
Okay. I'm pretty sure we did ask this question the last time, but if you could just refresh my memory, what if we were to hire you for the position? What time frame are you looking at? 2 weeks, a month, a month? What's your time frame to start?
It's a loaded question because.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's a
I'm
fair question, so I want you to make sure, like, you don't have to say 2 weeks because that's what most positions are. We understand this is a big position, and you're leaving a big position in another town. So
Yeah, and unfortunately, I have no loyalty where I am because of just the way I've been treated. So, I'd start Monday.
in a month,
Monday,
Monday. Oh,
but no professional courtesy. You have to give at least 2 weeks. I have a lot of capital projects that are in the middle, but I said we'll just leave it at least 2 weeks.
okay. All right, and I think really to sum it up, why should we hire you?
As I said, I've been around infrastructure for so long. I have no problem jumping in feet first. It's not my way, the highway. I work with others. Come to a successful resolution. Very good at problem solving. I know where to to go after things. I know how to negotiate. And I'm only 3.9 miles away.
Okay. And just as more of a benefits question, only because I was researching a little bit and I couldn't find the answer. What's the benefit percentage in your current town?
80-20.
80-20?
It's been changed to 75-25, but I got in at the time when it was 80-20, so it's 80-20.
Okay. There were so many tiers, I wasn't sure.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
it all depends who's sitting and negotiating.
Right. I don't have any more questions. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
No.
Well, thank
Okay,
you so much
excellent.
for
All right, no,
coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
We'll
Thank you
be
very
in
much.
touch shortly. Well, I'm not sure. It might be.
You don't have to put a time on it.
Yeah, we're not sure.
Yeah, that's
We
understandable.
thought it was going to be a
That's-
week, but it might be a little bit longer than that
COVID will call.
for scheduling purposes.
Yeah,
So,
that's fine. No worries.
all right.
Awesome.
Thank
Very
you
good.
so much
Okay,
for
awesome.
coming
Great.
tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
Thanks, Keith.
Thanks for coming.
How we all doing?
Fine, thanks.
Great, thanks. Lights are open, ladies and gentlemen, we do whatever you like.
Yes, Brian, in attendance tonight, I believe you know everyone, but Chuck Hession, Commissioner,
Chuck,
Stacy Callahan,
Stacy,
Dave Taylor,
Dave,
Interim Superintendent, Robin Day behind me, Secretary, and
Robin.
myself, Walter Simmons. Glad you could be here.
Yep. Thank you very
And-
much.
We'll let Stacy take over now, as far as the questionnaire.
My pleasure.
We're getting to the final stages here, and we're hoping to choose the superintendent shortly. Can you briefly just remind us, and the public, remind us of your, or briefly explain what your municipal experience is and what kind of project is?
Sure. Well, I had municipal experience as a consultant, and then moved over to the public sector side a couple years ago. And so now, as the assistant director of wastewater operations for the town of Hull, I feel this is a pretty similar position to what you're looking for here. It's a step up on the ladder, which I think I'm ready to take, having served in that role for a couple of years now, and worked under worked under a manager, a director who actually has, 35 years in the business, and he's also an engineer, and he also came from the consulting side, and, I think I've learned a lot from him, and I think I'm ready to take the next step and move up myself.
Great. So, over the last couple of weeks, I know, or maybe I think it was last week, you had a tour of the plant, the sewer plant. Can you tell us a little bit about how that tour went, maybe what you learned? Was there anything that stuck out to you that you might want to comment on? Or
Sure. Well, first of all, the plant looks a lot better than the Hull plant. So, you guys are doing okay. But yeah, I met Rick and Ed, and great guys. I think Rockland is not in a unique position of having a 50 or 40-year-old plant and needing a fair amount of work. The time frame when all of these municipalities were, the Clean Water Act in the 70s was when all these plants were built. They were all built 50 years ago, 40 years ago. And, everybody's going through the same thing these days. These plants were only designed with a 30-year life expectancy, and, every single one of them stretched. And, every plant out there needs work in Massachusetts, and, especially these older parts of the country that, are pretty much roughly built out at this point. So yeah, it's no surprise to me that the plant, and I'm sure the collection system as well, need a lot of work. And I know you have some preliminary cost estimates of what Wright Pierce thinks is appropriate for budgeting for upgrades and stuff like that. And of course, I have a few ideas myself. So yeah, I'd love to share those with you too and get your thoughts on that. I don't know, a few things you might not have considered. But yeah, the aeration system, obviously, like a surface aerator, that's a energy hog. I mean, it'd be nice to. There are lots of upgrades you could make there that would cut down on energy costs, and there are a lot of grant programs that would allow you to recapture some value from the digester system, and get a lot of the study, the engineering, and construction completely funded, or mostly funded by the state anyway. But the way that things are heading, there's usually there's becoming more money available for things like that, which I think is promising opportunity. So yeah, those are my thoughts after visiting the plant. Seems like a good place to work. So happy about that.
No, I mean, as far as repairs, they were, we have the draft final report in hand. And they were pretty intensive they've given us a variety of options to review and consider. So they were pretty meticulous. They looked at data going back, excuse me, as far as 2005 when we had data, all our repairs. They were very meticulous in reviewing the equipment. Their presentations were very thorough with a variety of options. I mean, our draft meeting went over 8.5 hours, just bouncing ideas, which is very good, which was really a lot of fun for me as an engineer. It was a lot of fun. But no,
Had to have been if it were an 8-hour meeting.
Hmm?
It had to have been if it were an 8-hour
no,
meeting.
in 8.5 hours. And it was just, there was no dull moments, I'll tell you that. So it's good.
Well,
Good interaction.
I call that a workshop, not just a meeting.
Yeah, no, it was a workshop.
Good. Sounds productive. Anyway, but yeah, I did. So, Stacy, you sent me some slides. I think is that from these slides, or it's that
The
from that
slides
meeting?
were from their draft presentation.
Okay.
I mean, that was what I sent, or what I had Stacy send you was just a mechanical overview. It did not go into the options because that just would have been another 7.5 hours we would have been here.
Sure. Yeah.
So what I wanted to do, the goal of that was to just give you so you understand the condition of the equipment, obviously, that you do. You know, it's nothing unique to any wastewater plant in the United States, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that our big issue now is capacity.
Yeah. Well, I also noticed. I mean, on the capacity side, it looks like your flows are increasing at 8%, and your BOD's only increasing at 2%.
That's dead right on.
That's
The flows are not accurate as far as the way we handle high water events. We do bypass.
Mm-hmm.
So we go on a year-to-year rolling average. Our rolling average rate as of now is 2.45. That was up to December. That's without the heavy rains. But that again, at that 2.4, that's figuring in the 20-month drought and COVID reduction. So it's a very precarious situation right now. And we're going to get into that in a little bit.
Well, yeah, that tells me, I don't know if those figures reflect, I mean, maybe this last year hasn't been as accurate. I mean, maybe this isn't indicative of prior years, although I don't know what the future trends might actually.
As far as flows, it would be the best thing I could give you to say is use the reductions in flow with the reductions in from industry and business being down. Maybe that's offset with people being home flushing their toilets, but there's a lot less water use. And we are in a 20-year drought.
Because I was going to say, on the surface, that looks like you definitely have some I&I you could take out of the system. It's
Well,
maybe
we're going to get into that as well.
Yeah, obviously, and yeah, from talking to Ed and Rick, yeah, sounds like maybe there was a little bit of SSES work, some SSES studies done, maybe some smoke testing and stuff like that. But you never know. You could do a good smoke testing
I'm going
study.
to be getting into the SSES in a moment. Let's go on to it now.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'm going to go through my spiel first, and then we'll do that. Now, the superintendent in his position reports to the Board of Sewer Commissioners. They're elected with responsibility to show regulatory compliance at the facility and that the taxpayers' money is being spent appropriately and correctly. The commission's also responsible for setting your long-term goals and objectives. They'll be mutually agreed on and set for you to meet. Now, barring any unforeseen circumstances, I can guarantee you're going to be held accountable to those goals and objectives that we agree on. Do you have any problem with that?
Everybody's accountable to somebody.
Okay. Because what I like to see is data and facts. So as an engineer like you, I am nuts on the numbers. With that said, what do you want from the Board of Commissioners? What are you looking for in return from us?
Well, I mean, I guess, if you give me the general direction that you want to take things, and give me, and if you have enough faith in me to execute your goals, then just give me some feedback. If you're, ultimately, I know that I'd be managing the sewer department, but of course, the commissioners are setting the direction of the sewer department, and I respect that. So,
Well, I would say you would set the direction. We're there to get rid of any roadblocks for you.
okay.
So, with that said, we hold meetings once a month. They're public meetings, they're not hearings. Personally, I'd like to see more public involvement in these, especially when we're looking at a very significant capital outlay for the taxpayers. And our decisions are going to impact them. And I'd like to see like 15 minutes open for general questions and answer to the public. Now, there naturally is going to be circumstances where there's confidentiality involved that either you set, the board sets, or town hall sets, and those have to be honored. But are you willing to be open and honest with every aspect of the position with the residents, or do you see the public as they're on a need-to-know basis? Do you believe that you play it close to the vest, or that you can manipulate the public? Do you see that your goal is to manipulate the public to your way of thinking?
Well, I mean, I think that my approach would be a balance of those two. I mean, at a certain point, if you're planning a project, and if you're too flexible on public input, sometimes the public can derail an entire project, and it's really hard to get a consensus amongst a town's full of people. You have to present what you think is the best approach, and try to make your case to accept that. But and so, I mean, by playing it close to the vest, as you say, I mean, not keeping anything from anybody, but being careful to not let a project get off track with too much input too early, maybe too early on. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to. This is, I mean, if a project needs to be done a certain way, some people might not agree with that, and some people would agree with it, and you have to. I think you have to be careful to some extent of, when you get the public involved in the process. Too early on, and you might be flooded with a bunch of requests that you just can't accommodate. So like one of the projects I have ongoing now, we're building a berm around the whole facility to protect us from flooding, and one of the crucial parts of this design is public input, because this is going to be a visible project that people are going to have some input in, and we've looked at various approaches. The public, of course, wants to see a natural nature-based solution with dune grasses and native plantings and stuff like that. But there are, when you get into the engineering side of things, there might be restrictions where you can't, you might have to make some of this flood barrier a concrete gravity wall, and which isn't as good looking as a nature-based dune berm. But from an engineering perspective, it might have to be there, and if you're not, I mean, if you're too flexible to public opinion, then I feel like that project will never get done, because some part of that project might be completely infeasible.
Well,
and people might not understand that all
I agree
the
with
time.
that to to a point, but don't you think it's your job to say, here's what we're going to do, and here's why I came to that decision? And
Oh, yeah,
here's
absolutely.
here's why we need to do it this way?
Absolutely, yeah. But I mean, it's not up to the public to design something. I mean, ultimately we have a job to do, and we have to get something to a certain point and present this to the public, and present our case, but not expect the public to design it for us in a public meeting. You know what I mean?
No, I'm not saying design it, but
So
why-
yeah, I think there's a balance there. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at.
have you ever had to reach that balance?
I'm sorry?
Have you ever had to reach that balance in a public meeting?
Oh, yeah. Well, we have a public meeting coming up for the berm project a couple weeks from now. And, that's been an ongoing process, and that's something that CZM is, they're big on public participation and public input and stuff like that. So we, of course, for example, there was one resident who was concerned about there's a flood detention pond or wetlands behind
Vernal
the plant.
pool or
I'm
a
sorry.
vernal pool
So basically, this resident was concerned about the presence of this wall damming up the flow so that it raises the water level in the wetlands, and they were concerned about flooding. I mean, us exacerbating flooding in the wetlands and compounding a flooding problem that they had at their house. And ultimately, we came to a we worked it out with the resident and did some further engineering study, and we actually designed a culvert to go around the wall, and which would, in a flooding event, the culvert would actually receive some flow and go around the wall. And that's not something that we originally had in the project, but I mean, it was really great that we reached out to the residents in the immediate area before we went to notice of intent with the Conservation Commission, because if you're not including the public in the process, then that person might have showed up at an NOI hearing and caused a big problem for the permitting with the NOI, an order of conditions. But so yeah, that was a balance we struck there. So yeah, additional cost to the project, but the resident had some good input, and we were happy to accommodate. But yeah, I think ultimately you have to get a project designed to a certain point before you can start accepting input, because you have to steer the ship. You can't let the passengers all take the helm.
Well, no, I'm
Yeah.
all for that, but
Yeah.
like I said, I would look at, once it's designed, that you'd be open to explain why it has to be done that way and show them why. And then
Oh
we
yeah,
can take it from there.
that's exactly what I see as my role.
It's very imperative that you understand Rockland is a blue-collar town like Hull,
Hmm.
and its residents in the town have been hard economically with COVID, and it's going to be reflected in your budget. Now, we can't allow to add levels of bureaucracy with the creation of additional positions to help you out. You're basically going to be a one-man show.
Hmm.
I mean, you have the operators down at the plant doing that, but other than that, being a one-man show, are you comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that, but obviously that does place limitations on what I can do in that position. For example, at the sewer department, we have in Hull, there's a director, assistant director, a facilities coordinator, and a bookkeeper. So really, it seems like this sewer department is running at half that staff level. and we're stretched with the staff level we have. So, I mean, I just think you need to understand that you know, that is a staff level that is lower than, you know, we have in Hull.
Well, it's a staff level that's been working, and unfortunately,
And
you're going
that's
to be
fine.
expected to work at that level for a while.
Well, yeah, that's fine. You know, I mean, if you have $50 million worth of capital improvements planned, you know, I think you just have to do it a little bit differently than we do in Hull. So, for example, we break that $12 million into, you know, maybe 5 different projects per year. And, you know, that's mostly managed by myself and my boss. But, you know, if the sewer department has a lower staffing level, you might have to outsource some more of that project management stuff, or you might have to tackle these capital improvements in bigger, larger programs.
Well,
I
the
think.
capital improvement plan hasn't even been, as far as the upgrade, hasn't even been looked at yet. That's in the planning stage. But like I said, Rockland's a blue-collar town. There's going to be budget shortfalls, and
Yep.
having staff is not an option.
And there's going to be more budget shortfalls than I think people even anticipate. I mean, I think right now, I think we're at the beginning of a commodity super cycle, and any cost estimates we have that are, you know, based on today's building materials prices, I think those could
No,
double.
I think that's going to go through the roof.
They're going to go through the roof, absolutely.
Well, I think
and
it's just imperative you understand it's a one-man show for now, for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm a bit of a contrarian in some respects, you know, towards centralized wastewater treatment in general. I think we got to ask ourselves, what is the future of wastewater treatment? Is it a treatment facility in the center of town that needs to be upgraded at a cost of, you know, $100 million every 50 years, or, you know, the equivalent of $100 million? And then, you know, maybe 10 years from now, so maybe you spend $100 million, upgrade everything's running fine. What about 10 years from now? What if there's a new technology out there, you know, where somebody can use some sort of solar-powered reverse osmosis type of equipment in their backyard, and it treats everything right on site there?
Well,
And I think you do have to be careful about investments like that, because, you know, if any industry is ripe for change, you know, because frankly we've had these cost estimates for, you know, so following our SSES study, we had a cost estimate of $12 million to fix all the pipes in town that needed upgrading. We have all these clay pipes in town. We have about 42 miles of pipes, which is I think is slightly under Rockland's length, but, you know, $12 million, and you know, that's a huge sum, and every town, city is the same way. So I mean, you can't just start ripping up every single road in town and replacing every single pipe. So, frankly, I asked myself, like, what is the future of centralized wastewater treatment?
Well, we're at the whim of the tree huggers, if you will. That every 4 years, someone flips a coin in a new direction. So, technology changes daily.
I absolutely, I agree. So, I think you got to be careful with, you know, $100 million investment.
Well, just so you know, the way we looked at this in this upgrade project, they were asked to spread it 8 to 10 years, so we could bite off chunks of it and see what changes.
Mm-hmm. Have you considered approaching neighboring communities because I noticed like
part of our
Brockton.
part of our admin order is we cannot take on any additional.
Well, what about sending your flow to Brockton or someplace? Have you considered that?
That's part of the options we're looking at.
Because, you know, did a quick Google search, and it looks like Brockton's wastewater treatment facility is 10 miles away. So if you're thinking about constructing a force main to Brockton, if they have capacity, $1 million per mile budget. So that's $10 million for a force main to send
You're
everything.
way out over your skis with this one. That, like I said, we're still in the planning stages on that.
Oh yeah, but I mean, sometimes you just got to think out of the box. I guess that's what I'm getting at here. And
It's funny you
I-
said that. That's a thing that we told Wright Pierce that was key. To go outside the box. Don't everything on the table.
Yeah, everything should be on the table. Because when your plant was built 50 years ago, things were completely different than they are now. And 50 years from now, they're going to be completely different again. And, that's, so yeah, thinking outside the box, that's what I like to do.
To date, just, get back on SSES for a minute. Rockland spent $600,000 so far on 2 SSES studies, one in 08, one in 13, and there's one due this spring. On top of those 2, they spent another $340,000 to document, identify, and it led to the removal of 350,000 gallons of I&I for a total expenditure of $940,000. Now, to date, not counted in our current loads that you saw on those slides, the board has already approved 16,825 gallons a day. We have pending another 41,000 gallons a day. And long term, say 4 years, we're looking at 200,800 gallons a day that they say is pretty well planned for the near future. Now, even if a municipal connection comes into our system and they don't pay the fees, to meet our EPA I&I requirement, our I&I requirement states that we have to remove every applicant has to remove 11 gallons for every one they contribute. So that means based on the EPA mandate, for what we approved now, we're looking at 185,000 gallons to remove already approved. 448,000 gallons that's pending. That's 2.2 million gallons, and if we look at that other 200,800, that's a total of 2.8 million gallons of I&I.
Mm-hmm.
To date, those 2 studies removed 107 sources of I&I. Now, Rockland has an option for new connections to waive the moratorium on new builds. We've never enforced the moratorium. It allows the applicant to pay a one-time fee of $20 a gallon times Title V 110 gallons times the number of bedrooms times 11. And that goes into a department fund to remove sources of I&I. Now, historically, some of those funds have been used on emergency equipment repairs because of the age of the equipment. Now, as you as superintendent, would you leave the fee structure as is? Have the applicant pay to locate and remove his sources on his own to meet the I&I equivalent before they connect? Having the applicant wait until we find the I&I sources, which we do now, and then charge them the applicable amount.
Sorry.
And if you have A, B, C, and D approved, and they each have to remove a certain I&I, how do you do it? First come, first serve to go after the I&I, or for them to meet their I&I requirement?
So the new connection, how do they? So they just have to pay a rehab fee based
Right
on.
now, if they want to connect, they pay a rehab. They pay a fee,
Mm-hmm.
$20 a gallon times the number of bedrooms times 11-to-1 ratio, and that goes
Okay.
into a fund for I&I. But unfortunately, in the past, some of those funds have to be tapped for repair.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
how would you guarantee that your I&I is going to be met?
Well, that seems. So we have something similar in Hull called a rehab fee, and it's $500 per bedroom or equivalent, and that's not actually a big source of revenue. We've spent in the last year probably $10 million on I&I removal, and the rehab fund is maybe $60,000 per year. It doesn't fund all the I&I removal that we have to do in Hull. Now, granted, we are on the ocean, so there's a lot of the pipes are below sea level, but I think Rockland, it seems like you have similar levels of I&I.
Pardon me, you said I didn't hear.
You have similar levels of I&I, a peaking factor of 6 or 4 actually. So yeah, so yeah, I mean, I would recommend you keep that funding mechanism in place for sure. But there's also, there's state revolving fund money that can be pursued, depending on the income level requirements. You might be able to get, some of that is waived, or it's 0% interest almost. So there are other funding
SRF
sources as well. SRF, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I&I can be quite expensive, and oftentimes that has to be paid for over a great many number of years. It might be hard to put that all on a developer of a mini mall or something,
Well, it's funny you brought that up, because this leads into our last question. I'm going to read it.
Okay.
Okay, Rockland is facing a major facility upgrade. As you know, we've been told that 95% of our equipment is well beyond the life expectancy, and that many of the parts required to repair some of the equipment are obsolete and no longer available.
Sounds
Believe me, I
familiar.
ran this by Wright Pierce, so I didn't not putting my words in. I wanted to make sure I wasn't embellishing.
No, that sounds familiar. Same
Yep.
problem.
So we've been told that it's a matter of when we have a major failure, and they were primarily looking at our aerators, not if we have one. And that we need an emergency contingency plan to deal with the possible system's failure. Now, do you think you could provide that contingency plan, or would you be relying solely on Suez to provide that plan to you?
So you need an immediate contingency plan in place to deal with possible system failures. I
Yep.
mean, yeah, I can work with Suez to develop that.
Okay, one thing you should be aware of, and I think I put it in that slide, that you mentioned pump stations in the infrastructure. They were not part of that study.
Mm-hmm.
2 of the substations need repair out of 13. 2 need repair, and I think there are 4 others that could. 2 need to be replaced, and 4 need repairs.
I saw that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you've been told by Town Hall that we're projecting $1 million budget deficit. Now, the sewer department is solely funded on the fees it collects on new connections and fees to its customers, not tax dollars. Now, faced with the possibility of future more rate increases to bank funds for improvements and find state and federal grants. New connections are going to impact our current capacity situation. We have an ongoing administrative order for flow violations since 2007. With the new permit being issued this year, I think it's very likely that we're going to be hit with a consent order, a very strict consent order. Now, you're being constantly pressured by Town Hall to accommodate developers. Now, I told you the amount of gallons that we've approved, pending, and future that's going to be added to the system. Now, keep in mind that 1101. So, with the 2.8 million gallons projected over 4 years, what do you consider the most important and immediate issue to address first? Knowing that the developers is a double-edged sword. You need their money to come in,
Mm-hmm.
but you're at capacity.
Right. Well, yeah, I think, obviously, yeah, you want to encourage development in the town. And, you don't want to hit anybody, harder than harder than you have to with,
But how do you
know, rehab
balance
fees.
development with your capacity? That you're at capacity now,
well, that's why I brought
and
up.
you're under an admin order with a pending consent order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you might have to get creative. You might have to think outside the box. Like let's approach Brockton, see if they can accept some of our flow. Maybe we just turn the treatment plant into a big pump station and pump it somewhere else. I mean, do you want to spend $100 million on?
But again, that's long term. I'm talking, you're dealing with today.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, we would have to identify the most vulnerable parts of the system and, have contingency plans for those and, prioritize our upgrades. And, I think, you don't want to place all the burden on new developments. I mean, rates do have to keep up with inflation, So, I mean, I wouldn't come in as an advocate for higher rates, but certainly they have to increase with inflation. And the cost of running the sewer plant is not going to get any cheaper, and I think people understand that.
Well, what would you advise the town to do with regard to the constant demand for new development and your capacity? Knowing that as you're adding, that equipment's still running around, still.
Yeah. So I mean, if the demand is there, then yeah, maybe you can receive more of that funding on the new demand. But
Say that again, please.
maybe you can put more of that funding on the new demand. So I mean, if more demand is coming from the commercial development sector, yeah, I mean, maybe you can receive more funding from that sector. I mean, but there's probably a level you'd have to find that balance. I mean, if the economy isn't doing so well and nobody's investing in commercial developments anymore, well, that funding source isn't going to be there. So, I mean, you have to diversify.
Okay. Due to funding constraints, hiring an outside consult engineering firm to oversee any of the planning or writing the RFQs and things like that is not it's not there. Can you handle all this?
Yeah, that's what I do. I do that in my position now.
Okay, here's the key right now. We're in a very pivotal situation here in town. And this question is really important. So, are you prepared to commit to Rockland for the long term? Or is this just a stepping stone in your career to move up?
Well, I don't know where. I mean, once I'm the director of the sewer department, I don't know where I go up from there. Town manager or something. I think that's the last rung on the ladder.
Well, you seem a gentleman with high expectations.
I'm sorry?
You seem a gentleman with high expectations.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, my point is that, there's only so high you can go. So, when you're climbing the ladder, I mean, you're climbing the ladder, but I don't know where you go from director of the sewer department. I mean, sewer commission, maybe? But,
Pays lousy.
yeah.
That's all I have.
So, if you were offered a position and you're the new sewer superintendent of Rockland, what would your first 30 days look like?
Well, first 30 days, I would, establish all my relationships, not only with the guys in Suez, but also folks at town hall. Good relationship with town council, town accountant, town manager, everybody I need to do business with, and also introduce myself on Facebook on the town's social media. Start interacting with the folks in town. And I think I would look at the operations and see, what do we need right away that I think we really need that isn't in place already. Like, do we have on-call contractors for, any sort of pipe breaks in the road, or do we rely on the DPW to do that sort of thing? I would look at those details and try to identify where we're vulnerable and where I think we need to have resources in place in case something happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So over the last 2 weeks, you've been at the plant, you've had some slides, you've been here a couple of times, you just talked quite a bit about the studies and where the plant is at. Do you have any additional questions, or that you may have left the last interview and you thought maybe I should have asked that question, or did anything come up in the meantime that you haven't had a chance to ask?
I don't think so. I mean, Rick and Ed were very informative at the plant.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I guess, yeah, I mean, my questions were more technical. Like, for example, had you considered, sending flow to a neighboring community? All these technical questions, but, I mean, those are things I can learn,
Well, just
within
on
the
that
first
matter,
30 days.
we did have conversations about going to another community. Rockland was one. I also presented the using excess treated flow for irrigation and non-potable situation. Golf courses, recreation. Those have all been covered.
Yep, recycled water. It's a good idea. Mm-hmm. Yeah, recycled water. That's another option.
They looked at
Yeah.
power conversion with steam, everything solar. I'll tell you, I've never worked with Wright Pierce. And I've dealt with a lot of engineering firms over 40 years. They're very meticulous, very thorough, very, very important.
Yep. Wright Pierce has a good reputation in the business. I've never done business with them personally. I know in Hull, before my time there, we had them. We used them for one engineering study at the plant. I don't know what exactly for. I know they've done business with us before. Just I wasn't there. But yeah, I do know they're a good company. I obviously, having previously worked with Woodard and Curran, I think they're a good company. Weston and Sampson, Environmental Partners. These are all good firms. I have contacts with a lot of these folks.
The ones you're naming, they're there for a reason. That's why they have the big bucks.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a small industry.
Yes,
I mean,
it is.
wastewater. Everybody.
Yes, it is.
If you've been around long enough, you've bumped into just about everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have any other questions for us, then I guess maybe you could just sort of round it off or finish up by just, answering why should we hire you?
Well, I mean, I have the right type of experience that I think you need here. I mean, having been on the consulting side, having been on the construction side, and having been on the municipal side, I've got all that. I've seen these problems from all three angles, with my background in engineering, I think I'm well qualified for this job, and I am looking for long-term employment. I'm not just looking for another stepping stone. I mean, I'm sure if you look back at my resume, you probably see that I've worked at a few places, but I've moved around a lot and moved up the ladder, and once I'd be happy to step into a role that I could at the top of the ladder where I could you know, spend a good chunk of my career. And you know, and I think there are some good folks over there. Everybody I met over there is really nice and great people, and you folks are all, you know, treated me very well. So thank you very much. Just happy to be continuing the conversation.
Great.
So thank you.
Great. Well, it was so
I
nice.
couldn't say enough about Suez. I mean, those two that you met are the best.
Yeah. You know, Suez is a good company. They're making good moves. You know, on the South Shore, they just got the like the Hingham water contract. So we work with the water company, which is operated by Suez now. And
I just
Good
look
firm.
at the crew we have here. I think we're very lucky. I really do.
yeah. You know, it would be sad for me to leave Hull because also the operators over there, great people. You know, having worked with Woodard and Curran as an engineer, I thought the engineering arm of the company was great, but working with operations over there has been just been an absolute pleasure. And you know, I think maybe it's something to do with the profession. You know, people in the wastewater operations profession. You know, they have a you know, pretty humble and easygoing mindset, and a lot of people are easy to get along with, I guess. But also dedicated to their jobs, and they know what they need to do, and you know, they chose this profession for a reason.
Yeah.
So it's easy to work with people like that, you know.
Well, we're looking, hopefully, within the next week and a half, we're going to have another meeting so the commissioners can kind of go over everything for that one final time and make their decision. So we'll have we don't have an exact date for the next meeting. It will be hopefully within the next week and a half, 2 weeks. So
Okay.
we will be in touch once they have a decision, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Good.
All right. Thank
Well-
you so much for coming back tonight.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to hear your decision. So
Okay.
ready to get to work.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you want to finish the meeting?
Make a motion to end the meeting.
Chuck.
All in favor?
Chuck.
Chuck?
Huh.
Make a motion to close
I'll
the
make a
meeting.
motion to adjourn.
Okay, second.
Oh.
All in favor? Aye.